Hello. Hello, you lovely people. How you guys doing today? I'm John Murdy, creative director, executive producer of Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Hollywood, and the first thing I want to say is thank you. Thank all you guys. Oh, now I can see you. Cool. There's a lot of you. You know, we had 2020, everything. It hurt me more than it hurt you. I don't know, that might not be true. It hurt you guys really bad, didn't it? But then we were able to come back last year, and boy, did we come back. So thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I feel like I owe you something, right? Feel like I owe you something. You know this is my phrase. I didn't write this is Shakespeare, you know, in case you were wondering. It's from Macbeth. By the pricking of my thumb, something wicked this way comes. How about an announcement right out of the gate? All right. How about an announcement for an original? I almost said maze, but I caught myself. House. Coming to Halloween Horror Nights 2022, Universal Studios Hollywood. Scarecrow, The Reaping. Are you guys familiar with this? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Credit where credit is due. This is a house that was originally done at our sister park, Universal Orlando Resort. What excites me about this particular house is that we get to do history, okay? So the first part of this presentation is going to be a history lesson. Is that okay with you? I didn't expect that enthusiastic a response, but no, you know, I'm a big history nerd, and what really excited me about Scarecrow was the setting of where it takes place, which is the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. Anybody familiar with the Dust Bowl? Give it up for the Dust Bowl! For those of you not familiar with the Dust Bowl, indulge me for a second, because I'm going to give you a little history lesson. We Americans, and I'm going to count myself, I live in Europe, I've been in Ireland for 5 years, I'm an American, right? But we believe some crazy stuff, don't we? Okay. So there was this thing called manifest destiny. It was this belief that, you know, we had to not only settle, you know, the original 13 colonies, but we had to go all the way across the entire country, settle the entire land. So in 1862, there was something called the Homestead Act. Check that out. How's that a recall from high school? 1862, Abraham Lincoln came up with this thing called the Homestead Act. And basically what it was is if you wanted free land, 160 acres, you could fill out the paperwork and pay the registration free, and they would give you free land. And this went on for a long, long time, started in the Civil War, continued afterwards. But what it meant is a whole bunch of people that went west. You see them in the picture next to that 200-foot giant woman striding across the land. They weren't farmers. They had no idea what they were doing, so they didn't know anything about crop rotation or the proper management of the land. So they went west and they started opening farms, and then something else happened. World War I came along. America suddenly became the breadbasket for the world, right? So that means they had to plow up more land and more land. And when I said, you know, we Americans believe some crazy stuff, this is something they actually believed back then. If you plow the land, the rain will come. Right? It's kind of like if you build it. Another great Universal movie, They Will Come. So they plowed up all this land thinking, well, it's just gonna, the environment will change, it'll start raining, but it didn't happen. In fact, they had a drought. And the area we're talking about is in the South American prairies, so this is kind of the hot spot where you see on that map. All of the land just turned to dust, and as the winds came along, it just blew it all off the land, destroyed thousands and thousands, millions and millions of acres. And these are actual newspaper headlines, and this is all part of the research I do when I'm first starting to work on a house. So you have these things called black rollers or black blizzards, and to me there's nothing scarier than history. Why is that? Okay, just imagine yourself. Imagine that's your house, okay? You're a farmer, you're waking up on a Saturday or Sunday, and you come outside and you're like, oh, what a beautiful, oh my God! big that is. Imagine this 200, 300-foot dust cloud is coming at your house. And then when it left this. Honey, I'm gonna get the car and I'm gonna go. Oh, never mind. I think I'm gonna hitch up Nettie and we're gonna. Oh. Everything was covered in dust. And if that wasn't bad enough, after the dust storm swept all the topsoil off this country, then came, not kidding, the plague of locusts. Millions and millions and millions of locusts descended on the land. Actually, my grandmother grew up in South Dakota around this time, right? And she remembers the plagues of locusts that were coming across the prairies and into the farms in those days. And I remember as a kid, she told me that they were so thick on the windows, it blacked out like all light. Everything went dark. So when I say history is horror, this is what we're talking about. So what did people do? They left. It was the biggest mass migration in US history up to that point. I think it was 3.5 million people just got up, abandoned their houses, and left. These are all famous photographs taken by Dorothea Lange. They're in the Library of Congress. And this is great research for us. So when we're starting working on something like this, we start plowing through all of those pictures, we start studying everything, and it suddenly dawned on me that what we were really doing was an ecological horror story, right? Because horror as a genre, since the beginning of time, it always deals with the existential threats of our time. Do you remember like back in the 1950s when there was all those giant atomic mutated insect movies? Universal made some of them, like Tarantula or The Deadly Mantis, or the Warner Brothers film Them. What that was really dealing with was the atom bomb and the fear of the atom bomb. So this is an ecological horror story about a climatic disaster. Now, when I was doing research, I kind of focused on these three images. The image of the Scarecrow, that's from Orlando, that's from their house. But I also like the idea of these abandoned farmhouses, and I like the idea of like nature trying to reclaim itself. So that's why you see all the vines crawling up the farmhouse. But then I also started zeroing in on crows, because technically, crows are supposed to be afraid of scarecrows, but in this particular house, they are in league together. And I liked one phrase that I pulled from Orlando's treatment that I thought was excellent, and that is the silent sentinels of the land. What's a sentinel? A sentinel's a guard, like a soldier that's on post. So we really like the idea that, these farmers have come in, they've overworked the land is all blown away, the topsoil is blown away, and everybody's leaving and abandoning their farmhouses, and who's left? The scarecrows and the crows. And now they're going to come back and reclaim the land from the people. And these are the people. This is another picture by Dorothea Lange. So the farm families that stayed behind, that didn't leave yet, they're the ones that are at peril because the scarecrows are coming for them. Now we'll get into the environments real quick, and we have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to go kind of fast. When I gave this to my art director, production designer, Chris Williams, give it up for Mr. Williams. Tomorrow is Chris's birthday, so he's off at a family thing this weekend, but he sends his best to all of you. But I gave Chris all of the research, all of the pictures I pulled, and then he designed our farmhouse. This is the original elevation. You see all the crows lining the roof, you see the vines overtaking the house, and then we turned that into a color elevation, which looks like this. And then if you're on the parking garage of Curious George, just happened to notice on Twitter that a lot of people take pictures of this particular facade. You can see it being built right now. So we carry that theme through in the beginning of the house as you go inside. The vines are crawling all over the walls. They're actually grabbing things and taking things out of the house. And then we carry it all the way through into the family room where you see the crows. They've all come in through the chimney. And when I was doing research, there was one image that I particularly liked that I gave to Chris, and it's this image. You see this little girl in a kitchen. Back in the 1930s, they didn't have money for wallpaper in these farmhouses. They didn't have money for insulation. So what they used is old newspapers. So I gave that to Chris, and then working with our art department, he started to develop elevations that would work that into it, along with the idea of like makeshift furniture. They didn't have money to go buy nice furniture. They usually went to a junk heap, found some old, pieces that were broken. They'd hammer some boards across it, and that would become your kitchen table. So in Chris's drawing, it looks like this. And then everything had to be self-sufficient. If you were on a farm somewhere in the middle of nowhere, you couldn't go to the grocery store to get groceries. So what they did in those days is they had pantries and a lot of canned goods and goods in jars. So again, I pull all the research, give it to Chris, and he draws it up. And then even like the animals, they would have like a smokehouse on the property where they would butcher their own animals and make their own meat. So we're going to take you through the smokehouse. Now, of course, it'll start out as, pelts hanging on the walls, and eventually it turns into intestines and, skinned people. Because what the scarecrows are doing is they're taking anybody that's left on the land and they're turning them into more scarecrows. So they're building their ranks that way. Then we have to leave the farmhouse. I love this picture when I was doing research of this outhouse. Thought this is a wonderful water spritz opportunity. You're welcome. So you're going to go by this old outhouse, and of course, you're going to get sprayed. But again, the crow, you keep seeing these crows showing up. They keep showing up through the whole thing. You see them as you go through the entire experience, including when we get to the barn. There's a whole number of them on top of the barn. And then, since we were talking about water spritz effects, I did a lot of research on bird poop. Okay? Hours and hours. I think I spent a whole day researching bird poop because I wanted to get something like this kind of consistency. Why does that come into play here? Because there's a scene in the barn, we call it the rookery. Does anybody know what a rookery is? Okay, yeah, but what is it? It's where crows go, yeah, that's where crows make their nest. They make their nest in a rookery. So we're going to take you through the rookery. This is a ground plan down view of it there. It's I'm going to screw this up, it's a dectagonal? It's a 10-sided room. And the crows are all above you, and then all those dark spots, that's their poop. And, just to go one better, they're going to poop on you as you go through the scene. So I've got my special effects guy working on this. It's going to be excellent. And then at the very end, you end up in this place called the Hive. And this is where they're taking all of the farmers, anybody who stayed on the land, who overstayed their welcome, and they're ripping their guts out, stuffing them filled with hay, and turning them into human scarecrow, or turning the humans into scarecrows. And I'm going to run you through the characters real quick. So this is the work of our artist, Lucas Colshaw. I think you guys know who that is. He's been our artist since I brought Horror Nights back in 2006. He's been with us every year. If you went through The Bride of Frankenstein Lives last year, Lucas did all those gorgeous illustrations. So we have a whole bunch of different kinds of scarecrows. I'm just going to click them through them real quick. These are our baseline scarecrows. And then these are what we call dusty crows. So they're like covered in that topsoil that's blowing all everywhere. They're all chalky looking. And these are the skelecrows. And the sepia crows. So these are the ones that were human not so long ago, but the blood from their wounds is still seeping through their scarecrow wrappings. Beast crow and barn crow. And these are the humans that are being turned into scarecrows. These are our cocoon crows. And then when we got to the ending, we thought, well, who's behind this all? Like, what's causing all this? There has to be somebody leading these scarecrows. So we decided to invent a character that didn't exist in the previous version in Orlando. Somebody that would be behind all of this. We call him King Crow. I want that coat and that hat. Maybe not the pants, but the hat. So obviously this is a stilt walker. And he's actually got LED eyes, because all of the crows in this house, they all have red eyes and they all glow red. So this is the man behind everything. And this is a bonus shot that Lucas did. This is just the full cast. And that's Scarecrow.